Please proceed.
Yes. So you are all most welcome to this plenary session that will be led by Mr. David Kabiswa, and I'll be the moderator, Lisa Tim. So as we wait for other people to join in, I just want to briefly comment on the previous session that we had that was very impactful. And what really stood out for me was when he mentioned, how we should work on the education system and the mindset. And it reminded me of, our education system in Uganda, how many people are often comment on, the subjects that we study in high school and, sort of wonder, what do these, subjects bring to the table? So when he talked about, working on our education system and mindset, that really stood out for me. I'll go ahead and share the profile of our speaker today. And I know just as you have been stirred up, inspired by the previous speakers, you'll also be inspired by our speaker tonight. So our speaker tonight, as I shared before, is Mr. David Kabiswa. And we will be expounding on the topic that is solving Africa's leadership and governance equation. David Kabiswa is a leadership and management consultant. His career has spanned leadership in senior management position, program development, and organizational strengthening of organization leaders, both senior and middle management. David has served on a number of boards, local and international. His knowledge of organizational development and operations, combined with critical analytical skills, has positioned him as a good facilitator in organization development assignment and events. David is involved in lecturing, training, and supporting in a couple of organizations in the country as he seeks to fulfill his personal mission statement of helping people live in their full potential. David has 3 core passions for personal development: strategic planning and the writing of instructional materials, an interesting array of passions that calls upon a broad spectrum of soft skills. He has offered financial literacy talks to Centenary and DFCU banks, organizational capacity talks to Clinton Health Access Initiative, the New Vision, strategic planning support to over 21 companies such as Rotary, Health Monitoring Unit, schools, and among others. David is an avid reader and has combined his love for books, ability to break down complex subjects into a sought-after inspirational speaker, organizational development consultant. He encounters a very engaging, humorous, and full of energy. His philosophy as a speaker is always leave a tool or model behind, so that after any engagement, the people feel empowered and able to carry on their development should they wish to do so. Mr. David Kabiswa, you are most welcome. I'm very honored to have you on the call. And I think I can agree to the part where he said he encounters a very engaging and humorous and full of energy sort of speaking engagements. I have been in some of the engagements that he has, been speaking at, and I would say that it was really engaging and exciting. And I just pray and hope that you will also, benefit from this session as well. Mr. David, you're most welcome.
Thank you very much, Liz, and good evening, or good afternoon, good morning, whichever part of the country that you might be in. I will shortly be sharing my slides. I have asked for co-host rights, so maybe when that gets done, I'll be able to do that. And of course, as they said, I like leaving a tool behind, and I didn't know it was actually there. So indeed, I will leave a tool behind today, because I'm coming to also particularly address the equation and see how we can address the equation together. I want to share my no rights. Oh yeah, now I can do it now. So that's what we are going to work on together. Solving Africa's leadership and governance equation. I put a subtitle, and that's what I'd focus on in this plenary together. Unleashing leaders worthy of the task. That's what I want to spend time with you. The text is, see, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it? I am making a way in the wilderness and streams in the wasteland. This is from Isaiah chapter 43, verse 19, a prophecy about what God is about to do. And the organizers of the Inspire Conference have deemed it fit to look at this together. I look at those words there, and we shall be breaking them down. See, I am doing a new thing. God is doing a new thing. We're being invited to be part of a new thing. He's telling us now it springs up. He's asking, do you not perceive it? Look at those words. To break it down, let's get some kind of operational definition here. What does see mean? What does see mean? Or what kind of usage would we have for it? And this is what I'm thinking. In this context, it could mean look intently. It could also mean observe. It could be calling us to take notice. Or perhaps even better, it could be asking us to discern. Meaning that there are things that could be happening around us, and the question is, are they just happening and you are also living life in just a happening manner, to use a Ugandan speak? Or as things are happening, are you taking notes to interpret what's going on in order to be an educated person about the situation? So to do this, I'm going to take a historical look. I'm going to please journey with me, as look at the history of our continent, and then see how and where do we place ourselves, and what can we do about it? Dreams of our fathers. I'm starting here with the famous one, What were his dreams? Kwame Nkrumah, Ghana was the first to get independence, and Kwame Nkrumah basically envisioned a country that would serve as the guiding light of African independence and solidarity. That was he envisioned that. He made this quote, our independence is meaningless unless it is linked up with the total liberation of the African continent. Things were happening around the world at that time that prompted him to say this. Ghana itself, to get its independence, had been a brutal struggle. He himself had gone to prison a couple of times, and he actually from prison when he realized that they'd won the election. So if you read a lot of these books, there's that kind of story. But that's what he said. Kwame was also an orator. I will let you know. He was also an orator. The second thing he envisioned was total African control and not negotiated coexistence in leadership. He was clear on that. We get in, you guys get out. Those are some of the good, ambitious dreams. Then he also envisioned a Pan-African movement uniting all of Africa. I'll not ask you who this is, I'll just tell you who it is. Patrice Lumumba. What was his dream? Africans to be in control of their destiny and of their nation. For in his case, free from Belgium, which had been oppressive. His dream was the management of resources in the hands of the people. He also dreamed and envisioned that the UN would support, in the sense that it would keep peace in the place of the Belgians. The Belgians must go. There was an assumption that once the white man relinquished control, things would be okay. Other people, what are some of their dreams? Tanzania, African socialism, where everybody would be equal, support one another, move towards prosperity together. So they came up with the policy of Ujamaa, villagization. They said, if we can put our Africanness on a large scale, wow, what a continent would get. That was his dream. For Egypt, during that time, they had a different dream. Freedom from the kingdom. Removal, control of the elites. They wanted none of that. They therefore had a popular movement, which was promises, and the republic came. Senegal, what were their dreams? Prosperity for the nationals. Protection, interesting for them, they had protection of the French interests, which are often at loggerheads of the national, needs, but that's what they had. And for them in Senegal, being a member of, the French parliament was considered a step even higher than president. But those are their dreams. Different countries, different dreams. I come back to this one to give a little bit of more history. And what happens? June 30th, 1960, Congo gained independence from Belgium. July 4th, 1960, a riot by the soldiers. That's just what it is. July 11th, Shombe declares Katanga province independence, lower down in the south of the country. September 14th, Colonel Joseph Mobutu stages a coup. All right, that's within the quarter. July, August, September. Imagine what's happening there. January 17th, 1961, Lumumba is murdered. And there's a big, investigation into all those sorts of things. But this is the plight of Congo. Within a fortnight of independence, Congo's plight was critical. Internal security had collapsed. The army had denigrated into rubble. The exodus of the whites had left administration without expertise. Kinshasa is in turmoil. The cessation of Katanga threatened to break up the country. That was happening in the Congo. Remember the dreams that they had? This is what was happening. What went wrong? There's a book there on the right-hand side. It's called The State of Africa, and it looks at Africa's first 50 years of independence. And there are very many things there. They talked a lot about Nkrumah. They talked about, Patrice Lumumba. They talked about many of those countries. And since I had not done history in secondary school, some of those things were new to me. So I asked somebody some of the negative things I had even about Nkrumah. Then I asked him, is this true? They said, no. It's just those white people trying to make Africans look bad. But in this very book, there's a section about pre-independence, the independence days, post-independence. And they had a detailed write-up of Uganda and its HIV/AIDS fight and battle. And because I'd been involved in the HIV/AIDS work in our country, I recognized some of the things there. And then I told myself, if this person can be correct in this particular area, why would they tell lies in the other? But this is what he said. Today, from now on, there is a new Africa in the world. Said Nkrumah. And this other part I already told you. But what actually happened? I want to take us now to this person that Prof talked about in the first section. Lee Kuan Yew, the Prime Minister of Singapore. And I want to introduce him to you. Some of you might not know him. So I want to introduce him to you gently through a series of photos. So understand a few of these things. The first photo there was when Singapore had been thrown out because it was initially Singapore and Malaysia were one nation. Different cultures, different people, different religions. Singapore is very, very small. It was almost like Katanga near Makerere. Or like some of you are familiar with the Kiseka market. Those people now they behave. That was Singapore. And so in an interview, you can see he's still young there, he said he committed himself. I have a few million people's lives to account for, to be precise, the 2 million. He told the people, the press people, he told them and confirmed, I'm not here to play somebody else's game. All right? He said another thing in that interview, that Singapore would survive. And at some point, he even broke down and cried. Later on in years, you can see his age there. These are some of the statements he made. Even from my sick bed, even if you're going to lower me in the grave, when I feel something is going wrong, I will get up. These are the words of a leader that was very serious about the destiny of his nation. And he said this too: to get good government, you must have good men in charge of government. Okay? Good people, we can put it that way, in charge of government. Samora Machel, what did he say? Tribalism is the commander-in-chief of Africa's problems. Okay? Let me just do something here. There are some things behind there I wanted you to see. It's just a small hiccup there. Let me just remove this for that moment. Let me just hit that on. Okay, so that you can see some of the things that Lee Kuan Yew had said. Okay, that's what I want you to really see. Some of the things that Lee Kuan Yew had said. Oops, I have not successfully removed it. Okay, sorry about that. I don't know why. Okay, I hope now. There are some words some quotations that came from Lee Kuan Yew that I wanted you to know. When he visited Africa, there's some of the thoughts he had. One of the comments he made: Raja and I was seated opposite a hefty Nigerian, Chief Festus, their finance minister. The conversation is still fresh in my mind. He was going to retire soon, he said. He had done enough for his country. Now had to look after his business and shoe factory. His business, which was a shoe factory. As finance minister, he had imposed a tax on imported shoes so that Nigeria could make shoes. Was it Nigeria? Or was it really him? So Lee Kuan Yew, in his book, he writes, I went to bed that night convinced that there were a different people playing to a different set of rules. 3 days later, after we arrived in Accra, they had been in Lagos, we were told by our host that there had been a bloody coup in Lagos. Prime Minister Abubakar had been assassinated. So had Chief Festus, the finance minister. An Igbo major from eastern Nigeria led the coup. The major said he wanted to get rid of rotten and corrupt ministers and political parties. This was 1966. These are the observations that people are making then. These are observations that these people are making then. And then the final comment there, which I had kind of taken out in the corner, I'll bring it back up for you to see. One of some of his conclusions as Lee Kuan Yew. He said, I thought their tribal loyalties were stronger than their sense of common nationhood. This was especially so in Nigeria, where there's a deep cleavage between the Muslim Hausa in the north and the Christians in the south. Those are some of the thoughts of Lee Kuan Yew. When we talk of, see, God is doing a new thing, another word that comes to mind is seasons. What seasons have we been through? I'll put a few here up for us. Slave trade, colonization and colonialism, agitation by the founding fathers to end colonialism. We went through independence. Independence had certain phases. The phases of winds of change, the phases of celebration, and then the wilderness ahead. The problem of tribalism, racism on the continent, something that disturbed us. We went through a season of these dictatorships. Remember those days of the, no, you probably wouldn't remember, but there's the Cold War. We went through, dictatorships. We went through liberation movements. We went through disease. Corruption is the modern day plight. But remember, I've just told you that in 1966, they removed the rulers in Nigeria because of issues like corruption. Then we went through a season. Some of you might now know these names. Thomas Sankara, a person that brought revolution and said, people, we can take charge of what's happening. Closer to us, we also went through a period of Magufuli, who was also a little bit of a big radical. We need to note that those that God will work through in this season must have risen from tribe and race. So we get to the equation. And as Prof said in the main plenary, there are many things that we need to handle. And here I've brought certain things at a macro level, micro. He talked the bigger picture. Now I've now brought something closer home. What are some of the things that we're struggling with? Up there, pornography, servant leadership, unmotivated civil servants, tribalism, crime, donor dependence, poverty, depression, mental wellness, drugs. Oh, the list goes on. What are we to do about all this? That's what we're going to try and explore together. There's some case studies that we can look at. Joseph, Nehemiah, Daniel, and Esther. Joseph saving Egypt, Esther saving the Jews, the nation of the Jews, the Jewish people. Nehemiah rebuilding walls, rebuilding a nation. Daniel, the salt of government. Is there anything that we can learn from these people? And the remaining minutes, I want to introduce you to something that can let you feel empowered about what we can do about the situation, such that instead of being spectators, we can actually do something about it. And I've called it releasing the leader in us. Why am I doing so? Because my working experience has brought me face to face with people that are looking for direction. Yes, some are Christians, some are not Christians. But even in the Christians, they talk about, I'm trying to discern God's will for my life or God's call for my life. And sometimes I use this expression, and I say a bean seed gives birth to a seed, gives forth a seed of a bean. A maize seed, maize. A maize grain, a maize plant. God put it in us that who we shall become is already inside us. But sometimes the processes through which we discover ourselves can be a little bit complicated. Either we do not know, or the things we hear around us have complicated them. Some people, it's not that they've even lost, they're looking for direction, but they might not have zeal and enthusiasm. We can get frustrated by all these things happening around us. We can get bitter. We can have a negative attitude. And those are some of the things that personally I've chosen. I will have a solutions mindset. And I'm challenging you. Look at those things happening around you. Please note, that's what the world has to offer. Don't let it make you negative. Leaders that exude potential but do not recognize it in themselves, I've come across them. Then sometimes they don't know. When you point out this, you point out that, and the tool I'm going to share with you is something that I use very often, even as I'm talking to people, to help them realize, I see this in you, I see that, and sometimes you even see a glitter in their eyes that, you mean you could see this? There's a man I met once, and when we did that, he called his wife straight away and just said, I have met a man, and he's told me about myself in a meeting of just 30 minutes because of this tool that I used. So sometimes, what's your potential? Some of you have it, and you felt that, you're uncertain. We need to note that there are principles and systems that we need to tap into in order to address the leadership equation. So my question, I'm now taking through a process. Who are you? Okay, and I've now added that word hedgehog. The hedgehog concept is a tool to help leaders and organizations. Actually, the first time I came across it, it was a tool which helped move organizations from good to great. The more I studied it, the more I internalized it, the more I realized it was very, very applicable to helping individuals. And for a certain stage in my life, that was my assignment. When I met people, quickly sat down with this kind of tool to help them, where are you going? How can I contribute to you moving forward? So it has 3 circles, interlocking circles. The first one is passion. The second one is asking things that you could be best in the world at. And then the other one is asking about resources or addressing resources. How we do this and how we use it with people is just helping them think through what they are in life and where they're going. And when they ask those 3 questions, we try to make sure that basically what it is saying, that intersection of those 3 circles is you. A little bit of that is you. And I'll tell you how we refine it into that to get into maybe a mission statement. But I'll give you an example. A couple of examples. When I look at Nehemiah, yes, many of us understand Nehemiah, we know him. Maybe I can even, if I can magnify it a little bit there. Yes, let me magnify it. Okay. What was Nehemiah's hedgehog? If you try to understand, what was he passionate about? He was passionate about the condition of the war. He was a critical thinker. He was into critical thinking, problem solving, prayer, and and going before God. He was passionate about the lives of the remnants. He was also passionate, when you read the book of Nehemiah, about adherence to the laws of God. Why? Because it was the disobedience of those laws that had led them to exile. He was passionate about justice, holiness, revival. Sometimes when I use this thing, I sometimes put passion/gifts. Sometimes I've been surprised that many adults don't know much about what they're passionate about. They don't know much about what they're passionate about. But then we go lower down. What was he best at? Mobilizing of resources, leadership of the returnees. Maybe we can also say fighting skills, okay, because you have to command all those sorts of people as a general, courageous leadership, and then also garnering of political will. This was just a quick one, just to let you talk through a little bit of what you can do in understanding this tool. Next was, what was the resource engine? The resources, what was it? The king's goodwill. And you remember the king, supplied him wood from where, letters to get timber and all. He mobilized all that. So those are resources, the goodwill of the king, the goodwill of the clan and household leaders. He had them. He had the critical thinking and wisdom. Those are all resources that helped him. And then the remnant population. Those are some of the things that he had. Another example that I can give you of an individual that went through that process. What was it? The individual had this to say, here we go. That they're passionate about the development of life skills. They're passionate about training. They're passionate about reading. They're passionate about certain technical subjects like organization development. They're passionate about social business, financial literacy. They're passionate about people purpose. You must understand your passion. Very many times when we use this word passion, people think more of love. No, but these are passion. And why do we want you to emphasize the issue of passion? Because passion is where the fuel lies. It means that if you woke up this person, gave them a task on maybe financial literacy, even if they were sleeping, they wake up and be consumed. That's what passion does to us. What is your passion? What are your areas of passion? But then we refine it. Not all your areas of passion are areas where you could be good at. And this process goes back and forth as you self-discover. In this particular person, they're good at facilitation. They're good at understanding technical models, at life skills training, critical thinking, executive coaching, inspirational talks. They're good at that. But if you're good at that, what can bring in the resources? And this is now financial resources. What will put food on your table? That Nehemiah one is looking at the collective, bigger picture. This one here, it's a micro. This person, executive coaching, strategic planning, social business. And when they processed all that, there's the intersection of all those three areas. This person realized, I am an enhancer. I am an enhancer. And that's some other examples. And I'll make it big again. Singapore. I've told you a little bit about Lee Kuan Yew. What did he think about? The survival of the 2 million people. Crucial. His other passion was that the countrymen would have a stake in the country, meaning the people would stay in slum areas, or people like in the markets like Iseka, who are always causing riots in the town. If they have a stake in the country, those riots would go down. That was his philosophy. And he made them stakeholders. Build buildings, they had a stake. Move people into those high-rise buildings according to the population distribution, not tribal. Like we have places here called Chimombasa. People who came from there. Chitoro, Chifumbira. Those sorts of names. It is because people of a certain tribal setting are the predominant people in that area. Lee Kuan Yew realized that if I do that thing, I'm going to propagate the problem of tribalism. What could Singapore be best at? What did he decide? He said, I am going to make this slum area, change it, that it will become a hub for civilization, Western civilization. It will become a hub where they can do technology. And why were they saying that? Because they knew that as Singaporeans, they had small fingers. And that would be a crucial element in the technology industry. What resources did he have? He said, we can only create industry. That will be our own resource from where we shall get a lot of what we get. And then how shall we do that? A refined population. That was the thinking of Lee Kuan Yew. And it is a country we keep talking about to this day. So his strategy is in the middle there, and that's the yellow box at the bottom. He said, for us to get there and to survive after that treatment that got from Malaysia, they were to leapfrog, jump all those years of development, all those years of processes that other countries are going through, and they're going to do it like Israel. And the second strategy was to become a first world nation. So the next one I've put here is for you. Can you go and think through some of these things? Yes, I've not forgotten. We're trying to look at how we solve the leadership and governance problem in Africa. We've seen the immense problems, but you see that I've now moved from the bigger picture and we're coming to you and me. What can we do? When I finished doing that with people, there are some 3 basic questions that I found very helpful for them. And even these, I use them when I'm doing things like strategic planning. When people are crafting a mission statement, we ask them, what do you do? For who do you do it? Beneficiaries, that is. And then for what anticipated results? That a mission statement should craft a few of those sorts of things. It must be specific to you, not too broad that anybody can claim it, but specific to you. So that principle as well extracted it and broke it down to an individual level. And that's why the statement there says, craft a statement that includes all 3. But be patient with it. It might take you a few years, for a few weeks for you to feel good about it, because you'll be going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Why have I brought it here? Because the writing of a personal mission statement has released the potential in many people, different from the jobs that they have. Not that they've left, but they're in a job, but now they had focus. And that's the desire that this conference will bring into your life. An example of a mission statement. To identify, call out, and nurture potential individuals. That's the first phrase. What do you do? I identify, I call out, I nurture potential individuals. That's what this person is saying. For, what do you do? For who? It is for individuals, not organizations, okay? For individuals. For what results? So that they live out their God-given purpose and potential so as to influence their spheres. That's the result. That is the result. So this person is therefore saying that when they're interacting with people, they're identifying, potential individuals. They're also saying, if I see that potential individuals, I call it out. I let the person, I verbalize it. I don't just go behind their back and say, oh, the other guy has potential. No, I let them know. All right. They're also saying, if these sorts of people need any help, I can nurture the potential in those individuals. They are focused. And what are they doing? Individuals. They said children, what? Maybe in individuals it means a child, maybe it's not groups. This person has zeroed down their mission statement. What is your mission statement, or what mission statement could you develop? I'm focusing on the yellow box now, putting it all together. In putting it all together, Proverbs 29:2 tells us, when the righteous thrive, the people rejoice. When the wicked rule, the people groan. So in quoting this scripture, it is just reminding us of what we can do or what we are called to do. Okay? I also wanted to add the scripture here. Just I'm reminded of, strive to excel, making ourselves a vessel worthy of the assignment. In God's house, there are many vessels for different duties. Okay? But the scriptures also call us in various places to study, to get, to find ourselves worthy. So how do we put it all together? Some of you have probably heard about this. I had heard about it many years ago, but I not understood it entirely. Or I thought that because I'm a Christian, because I'm a Christian, I am practicing servant leadership. Because I'm in a church, my pastors are practicing servant leadership. How wrong I was. When I found out the true definition of servant leadership, I also realized that many of our church leaders are actually not practicing servant leadership. So this is the challenge to you. This is the definition. The servant leader is servant first. It begins with a natural feeling that one wants to serve. Then conscious choice brings them to aspire to lead. That's what a servant leader wants. They look at a situation and something in them wants to enhance the situation here, wants to do something for other people. Something in Daniel wanted him to do that. Something in Nehemiah, something in Joseph, he interpreted dreams. Something in them. It's not about the leader, but what the leader wants to do for the people around them. I'll tell you, people, when I came across this definition, it's the only definition that I've ever come across that has a test to it. I got surprised. But there's the test. The test is this: do those served grow as persons? Do they, while being served, become healthier, wiser, freer, more autonomous, more likely themselves to become servants? In short, if I am a leader, if you're a leader and there are young people around you and you're working with them, the question to you is, are they becoming healthier people? Are they becoming wiser? What are they putting in them? Are they becoming more autonomous? Are you delegating? Are you letting them to run things? Are they themselves likely to repeat this cycle that because somebody brought me this far, they can, they want to do the same thing to somebody else? Sometimes they say it's better to give than to receive, and sometimes you don't believe it, but sometimes you know to get a smile. Give a smile. That's what this concept is all about. How to enhance people. In fact, these days when I'm talking with people and helping people, I just say, no, don't worry about what you're doing. Just ask yourself a question. How can I add value to this person? It's a little kid. How can I add value? How can I add value to this old person? How can I add value to the driver? How can I? It's amazing. If we had this kind of servant leadership, how far we would go. And when you see these two tests, you can now understand the statement I made earlier that many of our church leaders are definitely not in servant leadership. Many of our leaders in our nations are definitely not in servant leadership. Many of them are actually into what is in it for me? What is in it for me? What is in it for me? In that box there, maybe I'll just, make it a little bit bigger before I move off this page, if I can do so. Just for you to see what else is in that place. Okay. There's some 5 things there, short ones, which can summarize the leadership challenge in that particular context. But I've got some more detail. Maybe I'll just take the detailed ones that I have for you. Servant leadership. There's some 7 pillars there. And those 7 pillars are saying things. What are they saying? Person of character. Puts people first, number 2. Number 3, skilled communicator. Number 4, compassionate collaborator. And under each of these, I've put examples of what that means. One of my favorite actually is number 5 and number 6. Okay, even number 2. I like it because servant leadership to many people sounds like weakness. But this one is saying the servant leader has foresight. You know the kind of person they ask, where are we going on it? Where? Where do you want to go? No. You have foresight. You're saying if you do this, if you do that, if you consider this, you've thought ahead of things. Number 6, they're a systems thinker. You act strategically, but this decision is likely to impact the other person. It's also likely to impact the other person. This is servant leadership. So you can see how tough it is. Because many times when we quote the story of servant leadership, we talk about Jesus washing the disciples' feet just before the Last Supper. And he warns them that the world does it this way, but for you, it should not be so. The greatest of you will be a servant of the other. Yes, servant meaning, how can you add value? How can you add value? How can you add value? I'm taking it back to the other hedgehog that I showed you. And asking and challenging you, whatever you're doing, can you scale it up? From those three things, your passion, what you could be best in the world at, and okay, the intersection has called you, whatever it has called you, maybe you're a liberator, maybe you're a motivator, whatever it has called you, or maybe you're a governor, or a politician, whatever it has called you. It all starts with level one, the personal hedgehog. You discover it and articulate it. When it gets into leveraging, you find out which of those sorts of things can stretch out beyond you, scale up. And some people, because of their gifts and understanding of their hedgehog, they have formed companies. There's something called Rakai Coffee, Hope Coffee. Some pastor realized that God had called him to help the people of Rakai to increase their wealth creation, to take them out of poverty. And because he had been used to child sponsorship, God gave him a model. Child sponsorship plus coffee, he merged the two. He's doing that and taking it even to another level. Kenya, all right? Bishop Masika started off as an individual. What was he trying to do? To make sure that the area of Yatta, which is bordering like the Karamoja area, with all these challenges in water and all those sorts of things and the droughts, he was concerned. He got passionate and kind of asked himself, "What can I do?" And he started off with the first statement of no more aid. Take aid out of this particular place. And people thought he was joking. He taught those people how to do water irrigation, how to fend for themselves, how to, instead of just moving with cattle and stuff like that, cattle here, there, to get into, horticulture and stuff like that, that region actually exports. His work was noticed. The two of those individuals in number box 2, their work was noticed by the leaders of that country, of the different countries. In Uganda, the RDC noticed this person, took them up. One time they even took that individual to the president to say, how can this model be scaled up? In Kenya, Bishop Masika got national attention. Minister of Agriculture kept going to his place to find out, how can you do this? Ministry of Agriculture. Where did it start? Church, individual. But from an institution, you can go to an organization. There's the Grameen Bank. Some of you that have done, things like microcredits. That's the founder of the thing. It's a bank. It has gone into different countries now. Grameen, the father of. Then if you go to, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, some of you have also gone that. It grows. It grows. When an individual thing grows, like the current STI project, you had Prof talking about INT, the minister of STI, Honorable Monica. She was one of the students of and one of the mentees of Professor. And the STI, what you see, the changes that are happening in this country, it's from an individual's personal passion that has gone into those sorts of institutional setup like STI. Is being able to fight the battles that they fight, and I repeat, passion is the fuel that keeps you going, even when you knock the walls very, very many times. When it goes to number 5, that's where Inspire Conference, for example, is. 21 years, an idea has crossed and is cutting all these borders. And I've called it there from local people. It is to challenge you. Your little idea, do not underlook it. Use that hedgehog. Become an SME, as in subject matter expert. Keep doing your thing. Excel at it. Get out of your comfort zone and stretch it. Stretch it. Get partners. Go to the next level. That's what this image is trying to help us, to encourage you to do. Okay. Then the next one is just mission statement. Is that it? What about assignment? I brought this here because sometimes there's a struggle there. And I also, resolved this struggle a couple of years ago. I thought that once I do my mission statement, that was it. But then I realized that it's like the mission statement could be something like this. And then in a certain season, you could get an assignment. Go do this, go do this, go do this, go do this. My assignment now, for a long time, I've worked with young people, helping them develop skills to deal with life appropriately. I train them. Sunday school, I do the training. Schools, I do the training. I can relate very well with those young people. Wherever I go, we have a chill, we have a blast, we connect. But suddenly, this year I felt God say something different. He said, I want to now give you an assignment. And this assignment is because you've got speaking skills, engage men. I want to start addressing the challenge of men and sons, the absence of men. So have I done that before? No, I haven't. Have I got the skills? Yes, the skills I can borrow from. But it's an assignment. Maybe it's just for this year or 2 years. I do not know. Maybe it's going to be an assignment that will become the main thing. I do not know. But people, Christians, people on call, I'm asking that once you've done your once you've done your mission statement, take it a step further. Process, go, think, reflect, meditate, ask, what else is God asking of me? I do not know how many of you are mathematicians here, but as we wind up this discussion, the leadership and governance equation, there's an equation for you there. Solve for X. But since we're not in class, I will skip that. But how can we solve for X? We've said, we can talk at the macro level and say, I would know these ones have not, their retirement age is too, that's an issue. Retirement age is too low. There's no space for the young people. If only the older people went, who told you that if the older people went, the younger people would know what to do? Okay. They don't know what to do, but so we're in the second equation. X is equal to -2 plus or minus the square root, meaning maybe we need mentorship for those people. Yeah, and then if we mentor them, then we mentor them in the skills. Yeah, but we must mentor them in skills, but wait a minute. Yeah, but also in character. You don't want somebody, to be in this particular position and they're just sleeping around with everybody or stealing people's money. There are a lot of things that could take our time. And they're like the equations in those two boxes. But if I were to simplify it, like sometimes they're also basic equations. I didn't put a basic one here. I'm proposing to you. Start with the heart. Start with a solutions mindset. Start with yourself saying, what can I do about this situation? Number 2, articulate your unique contribution. And that's also your head. Number 3, write down your mission statement. What you think you're all about, what defines who you are. Next, leverage your hedgehog. Make it grow bigger. Okay, it's yours. That's your mission. Maybe touch family, touch, organization. Even in places of work, you can take your mission statement there. And it influences how you do your work. You get an assignment within your job. Too many people, they just do what the job does when they're not giving them an assignment. They're just there either playing solitaire or wondering what to do. But people with direction would maximize the time that they're using. And finally, I'm encouraging you to practice servant leadership according to the things that I've told you and shared with you there. My conclusion is this: get involved. Then I heard a voice of the Lord saying, whom shall I send? And who will go for us? And I said, here I am, send me. This is what I call a solutions mindset. I'm sharing with you from a very passionate perspective. I refused to complain. I refused. I've been called naive. I've always sought and asked myself, what can I do in this particular situation? So to solve the equation is you. And that is my conclusion. Thank you very much. Back to you, Liz.
Thank you so much, Mr. David Kabiswa. That was a handful of information and very elaborate at that. I know we will need to rewatch some of these videos for some of that information to stick. But I think one thing that stood out when you were sharing is that we cannot talk about our vision, like knowing our vision, our mission, statement and all those things enough. And I know many of us have had this, and probably we have thought that this is for the few, maybe for certain individuals. But what I get from you is that we not only as individuals need to identify our vision, our mission, and all those things, our passion, but also as a nation, we ought to have a vision. As a
Yeah,
nation, we ought to
yes.
have a mission. And I was really impressed when you were talking about that gentleman from Singapore. I'm like, wow, Uganda needs one as well. But yeah, thank you very much for sharing. We are going to have questions now. I had one that has been burning, even when, the topics were sort of like switching up. And I was wondering, when you were starting your presentation, you gave us wide examples, many examples of influential leaders that have been there before. And clearly, from what you have shared, they have done the work, they are the Moseses that have done the work right now. But then I'm wondering, what should we do now so it doesn't become a cycle of like our forefathers, did all these things, fought for all these things in leadership and governance, and we are doing the same thing. Like, what do we ought to do right now better to
Right
see
now.
to see results? Like, we need to see results. I don't know what you think about that.
Thank you, Liz. That's a nice question. The challenge every time when you're writing a presentation like this one is how do you select to bring contemporary examples? Because if you bring contemporary examples, some people wonder why that one, not the other one. We have got contemporary examples. We've got the contemporary example. I shared one of Monica Mosenero. She is transforming how government does business. And I'll tell you, she's being targeted by many. They want her out, they want her whatever. There is something like that, okay? There are people like, people that are making changes, people that have started realizing that we're going to change this schooling system. Let me say like Mrs. Lona Magara, who started off by things like, let me do some homeschooling. Then after that, it became an institution. Now, the institution has grown. It's now coordinating other people doing, that kind of curriculum. That's another. Professor Nick Bogu himself, he didn't talk about it, but he did in Nigeria because of his passion from INT. He did, what they said, and they organized an agri-entrepreneurship, conference, to start showing the government what to do. Okay. Now, Professor Nick Bogu is in this country again from that passion, working with Busitema University to do that similar thing. Okay. So there are those sorts of things, of examples that we can give that are numerous. Rwanda here, the way it is going, the decisions that they're making, many of the Rwandans or the leadership is following Lee Kuan Yew's example. Okay. I wanted to write about President Traore. And I said, Traore, now people might, the examples are there. And do you know what? There are even other examples amongst people, even in this particular conference. Okay. The other day, I saw something about a school that has pioneered and piloted iLead. There's something running, moving around on social media. Why am I just bringing out some of those now? It's because of your question. But it also lets people know, do not underestimate the day of small beginnings, like we're told in Job. Do not underestimate that day. Yes, those big ones we talk about because everybody knows them and says, yeah. They'll not, fight you. The contemporary ones, people feel, what about my example? Something like that. And there could be people here. Should we know your story? We'd encourage you to, put it on social media. Let us get to know. Like even one of the Christians who transformed URSB, Uganda Registration Services Bureau. Student of INT, she's transformed that thing. Justice Mike Chibita transformed the IGG, the DPP. They're introducing a certain court where children can be, how are they prepared, how are they looked after. So those sorts of things are happening. What we need is many of these things happening, but many of these things being known, and then the nation will go to the next level. My struggle is this. We always think that the things that need to make big names is economics, it is jobs, it is politics. If people don't get jobs, they're unhappy and stuff like that. No, we need to, you'd be amazed at what we can do. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. I think also when you talked about people focusing on politics and other things, when you were talking about the limitations of leadership and governance, I was happy that you actually under those pointers that there was mental illnesses. I'm a mental health specialist and enthusiast, so
Okay.
seeing that you included depression, drug abuse, I was like, yes, because most times people take these things for granted. And yet there are actually big limitations to who we are called to be, in this nation and all over around the world. There is a question here. Someone asks, many African parents are opting to taking children through American and European curriculum. Some of these educational curriculum, including Christian ones, de-emphasizing the significance of the history you have shared. Others do not teach about the dangers and effects of colonization, slave trade, racism, and apartheid on the pretext that they do not want to expose children to negativity. Will these foreign educational curriculum, even American-based Christian ones, deliver servant leaders in Africa who will develop Africa within its context? Or are they developing agents for recolonization who are no good for Africa we want? Wow.
Wow. That is like when they took the lady to Jesus and said, we want to stone this one. She was caught in adultery. Let me say it this way. Curricula is curricula. Curricula is the formation of a mind. Okay. Even yesterday, I think, we had somebody talk about a curriculum. Now, do you know many of us, I didn't do history. Okay, but when I got into this book, like State of Africa, I started finding out, I started getting a passion about understanding some elements of history. But I've also found out one of the things that has troubled me most, that people know history, but they don't follow history. One of the things that puzzled me, because I drew a hedgehog for Mandela, and in his intersection, I was convinced that he was a liberator whose motto was a South Africa for all South Africans. And I felt that the day he died, and in those ceremonies, that part of that mission went down. When they said there will be a funeral, and then a funeral for the other funeral, So again, the segregation basically kind of came in. The good news is that I've met people that have studied international curricula. There could be some advantages, some disadvantages, but some of the disadvantages might also be just for people living in the urban area. When you do not grow up speaking your local language, there are certain things you might not necessarily know about a culture. All right, the cultural behavior and stuff like that. It does not come out in English as it could come out in your local curriculum. One of the things I like most about the international curricula that I've come across is initiative, goal setting, confidence. Those curricula, in my view, at a younger age, deliver confidence way beyond what our national curriculum delivers. When you go and talk about curricula like the IB, where people learn how to do research, which people do at university, where people learn how to do research in S5 and S6, where people start as part of their projects, they're interacting with the UN, then you know how some of those people in that curricula could take an edge. Now, I think also many people have chosen that curricula because ours is not responsive to the needs of the people. They have asked for reforms in Ministry of Education. It says not as always been like that. You can't start your child unless there must be 6. Other curricula starting earlier. No. These ones, they taught us. In fact, the policy says that is a policy in the 1960s. So sometimes the inflexibility of that curriculum is what has made people go to the international curriculum. Okay. Now you see, and part of when they're doing the reviews of our curriculum, they actually went and studied the international curriculum when they came up now with what they call competency-based curriculum. But now the challenge is that our teachers don't know how to kind of mark it or even how to teach it. They need to be trained, of course, because they can't just say, repeat after me, because it also demands that the teachers are creative. So going back to your question, it's not a simple answer. Because somebody has not done history, doesn't mean they can't lead. All right? Because they lack that history. One, they can read the history, but we've seen that those that have had the history, how have they led us? A lot of these countries where we're talking about this equation is not because people did a certain kind of curriculum. It is the same people of the same curriculum that are oppressing those under that very same curriculum. One of the things I find that our curriculum teaches is absolute fear of authority. And man, if we're going to talk about the need for innovations in any country, innovation and creative thinking, one of the things that you have to separate, you free yourself from, is that command and control kind of attitudes, top-down culture. And absence of that top-down culture is not the same as saying that people be disrespectful, no. But people need freedom to be able to deliver. So the short answer, the international curriculum can be weighed merits and demerits. Personally, where I've reached, I've not seen its demerits to outweigh those of the national curriculum. In fact, to the contrary, and I think that's why many people, it's mushrooming more and more and more and more and more because of how people see it's benefiting their children. But many can also be things like history can be added. Thank you.
Thank you. When you mentioned the statement of repeat after me, it reminded me of my primary days. But yeah, I feel like Uganda, we now have a new curriculum. Yes, it still needs some work, but at least we are moving forward.
We are moving.
And I like what you say, that the new curriculum is not the intention is not to take away our tradition and all those things, but also the fact that we are seeing very many parents looking out for these other new curriculum is already an indicator and a sign that we need to work on our education system and mindset.
So true.
So thank you so much for that. I have another question. And he asks, also with the many tribes we have that are hindering progress, how can we use different tribes to see each other as citizens of the same country? Because in my country, some tribes feel they are better and deserve the natural resources more than other citizens.
That has been something that has been inherited from the colonialists. Use that a lot, divide and rule. Even in this country, they made the northern countries, the northern part of the country, plant the hard crops, tobacco, cocoa, cotton, that had high labor things, heat, and then they took them to the military, and then the bigger crush crops are down here. They did that. They did that in Chad. You find that in Chad. You find that in Nigeria. It's on one hand, I also wonder, like one of the statements I said there when the slides were disturbing me was the statement from Samora Machel when he said the tribalism is Africa's commander in chief. I got so angry at that statement. I kept wondering, how can he be the person saying it? But it is true. And to this day, they say race and religion are things that get people very emotive. How do you remove that from people? I think it is one, sometimes they use the language English. So tribes kind of get mellowed there because there's some cultural things that people do not necessarily know. That is one of the things. But it needs servant leaders. Lee Kuan Yew was a Singaporean of Chinese descent. When he took over, the Chinese people thought that their language is going to be the main thing. He said, no, the main language is going to be English. So they went ahead and started undermining him. He put them in prison. He did. He stood up and said he was not going to have things that would be divisive. For me, I think until people from a tribe, which seemingly is benefiting, stand up and say this tribe will stop benefiting, that's the only way to make a message. When the tribes which are underserved are always the ones complaining, nobody minds much. They just give it lip service. When a leader from a dominant tribe stands up and says, guys, enough of this, you'll be surprised. There, I think we shall overcome our challenges.
Yeah, true. I agree as well. And I know in your session we have praised enough the servant leaders, but I just want to echo that the shepherds and the steward leaders, you're also important as well. Yes. I'll just take two more questions and we will wrap up quickly and go back to the main room. Every effort thrives in the right culture. What kind of mass culture initiatives can we kickstart, even if fruit may be a few years from now?
Yeah, I think that's an easy one. And this is what I'm going to say. Culture is in management. They define culture is the way of doing things. And the reason I said it's easy because I'm taking it away from cultural, tribal practices and stuff like that. So if we like in Rwanda now, they've had some cultural changes where people now know you can leave your thing somewhere and find it because they punish theft and stuff like that. The mindset has started shifting. If it's not yours, Rwanda has also done something about Buvera. So culture is going to be for us to pick certain things, to value them, reward those that are, practicing them well. Not too much to punish, but we need to consistently do it, and then it will become, excuse me, it will become something that will take us to the next level. So culture can be introduced, and then has to be reinforced. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I like the word that you said, consistency, because you can start something, but if you're not consistent, it can just die. So let us just take the last question real quickly. Why don't some African leaders love their people enough to want the best for them, as did the leader in Singapore who transformed his country? It seems they don't love their people more than they love themselves. What is the problem there? Lack of knowledge of self-identity?
Another simple one, and I'm going to say this: it is sin and selfishness. I've told you now that the challenge, that the assignment that God has given me is the father and son relationship. There's a book I'm reading now. It's called Absent Fathers and Lost Sons. The one I want to read next is called The Effect of Absent Fathers on Lost on Daughters. Now, it starts at that level. The father is not being, is not there. He's just providing. Then the teacher's bullying you, and then it's called a top-down culture. So let's leave those leaders, because those leaders were picked from us. It's just that the stage they're on magnifies their weakness. But what we're saying, that we're weak at that level. When you get a church where, one time I visited a church and as a speaker, and then they said, carry your things. I said, no, I can carry them. Then the man told me, if I don't carry them, I'm going to be fired. I gave him my Bible. I said, I didn't want to be responsible for the person being fired. But that is wrong. Now, we're going to sit here because the guys at the MPs and stuff like that, their weakness looks bigger up there. No, they're just a mirror. They're just a mirror. We're doing the same thing. So if we can sort out ourselves, that is sin. And the culture of top down, which we can educate and move away from slowly by slowly. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, Mr. David Kabiswa. I can't say thank you enough for this session. We will be joining the next session. Maybe people in the chat, you can clap. Feel free. We are not on order and command here. It's a free space. But thank you so much. We hope to learn from you even in the other spaces where we shall meet.
Thank you. Thank you for leading us.